The pie had just come out of the oven when the phone rang. I was still wearing my scrubs under a thick winter coat. The smell of cinnamon and brown sugar clinging to my sleeves like a second skin. Outside, the snow kept falling in the quiet way Michigan snow always does. Slow, deliberate, like it knows it has nowhere else to be. Inside, everything was ready. The suitcase sat by the door, half-zipped, with a forest green sweater folded on top. A stack of wrapped gifts leaned gently against the entryway bench. Small things I had picked out with intention. Dad's favorite bourbon, the one he always pretended not to like but finished by dessert. A cookbook Celeste might actually enjoy. Socks with tiny turkeys for Ethan, because tradition is tradition, even if he never remembers where they came from. I hadn't sat down yet, I was still ticking off the final items on my mental list. When Ethan's name lit up my screen. "Hey, Nat," he started, his voice warm and too upbeat. The kind of tone people use when they're bracing for a reaction they don't want to deal with. "So, listen, Celeste is really sensitive to energy. And with your schedule at the hospital and all, sometimes things feel heavy around you, you know." I stood there, one hand on the pie tin, the other gripping the phone a little tighter. "I think, for this year, it might be better if you sat it out, just to keep things light." He said it like it was nothing. Like missing Thanksgiving with my family was a casual choice. A hiccup in a plan we could all laugh about later. Like I hadn't already booked time off, packed gifts, baked the pie. I swallowed something sharp and dry. "Okay," I said. That was it. An hour later, my mom called, her voice syrupy sweet. The way it always got when she needed something unpleasant to sound polite. "Honey, we're just trying to make things easy for everyone," she said. "You know how Celeste is. If you show up, it might cause confusion. Honestly, we might not even answer the door." I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I didn't ask who decided I was the one who didn't belong. Instead, I unplugged the string lights draped around the window. Folded the cloth napkins I had set aside to bring. Put the socks and the pie in the fridge. Then I walked to the kitchen table, pulled out my laptop, and opened my banking app. First, the automatic transfer I set up to cover the maintenance fund on their house, canceled. Next, the monthly top-up to Ethan's account, canceled. The co-pay for Mom's therapy sessions, canceled. Everything that made me useful but invisible, quietly undone. The radiator hissed behind me, the only sound in the room. I looked at the pie, still warm, untouched. Then I opened a drawer, took out a pen and yellow legal pad, and started writing. 2015, Ethan's art supplies. 2016, new brakes for Dad's truck. 2017, roof repair. Line after line, year after year. Somewhere along the way, I stopped keeping track of what I gave. But tonight, I would. They never forgot Ethan's paper turkeys. Year after year, those lopsided little birds made with construction paper hands and googly eyes. Showed up in framed photos, family slideshows, even a Christmas ornament one year. But the pie, the one that showed up every Thanksgiving like clockwork. Still warm, always devoured, always gone before dessert plates were cleared. No one ever asked. I used to think it didn't matter, that love didn't. That was before last night. Now, sitting cross-legged on my living room floor. My tea lukewarm in one hand and the yellow notepad in the other. I started going backward. 2014, covered Ethan's first month of rent when he missed a freelance deposit. 2013, paid for Mom's dental surgery after insurance denied coverage. 2012, bought Dad a new winter coat. I wrote slowly, letting each line settle in like snowfall. Soft, quiet, weighty when it adds up. The radiator ticked behind me. I took a sip of tea that had gone bitter and cold. But I didn't get up to warm it, I just sat there and let the memories come. When we were kids, I remember standing on a step stool beside Mom, helping her peel sweet potatoes for the casserole. She barely looked at me as she handed me the peeler, eyes already on Ethan. He was at the table with glue sticks, scribbling names onto construction paper cards. He spelled grandma with a backward R. Everyone laughed, said it was charming. When I brought home straight A's, the report card got a nod and a "good job, honey." But when Ethan got a participation ribbon for school choir, Dad taped it to the fridge for 2 weeks, like it was a medal. I remember, and then she turned back to the stove. Ethan, meanwhile, dropped out of college 3 times. I once found a sketchbook I used during med school. Tiny watercolors, scribbled thoughts between rotations. Tossed into the recycling bin under grocery ads. When I asked about it, Dad said, "Oh, that was yours." I thought it was one of Ethan's drafts. That was the moment, I think, when something in me clicked off. Not out of spite, out of understanding. Some people shine in the spotlight, others keep the lights on. I looked back down at my list. 2016, Thanksgiving, made sweet potato casserole, they said Ethan decorated it. I didn't correct them. And I wouldn't now, but I also wouldn't forget. Thanksgiving morning came with no group text. No, Happy Turkey Day, gifts, no last-minute requests for ice or whipped cream. Just snow. I made tea, not coffee, the kind with cinnamon and chamomile. Because it filled the apartment with a warmth I knew I wouldn't find anywhere else that day. I didn't play music, no holiday playlist, no soft jazz in the background. Just the hum of the radiator and the gentle whistle of the kettle. The pie sat in the fridge, untouched. I didn't take it out. Instead, I moved slowly, folding the throw blanket across the couch. Lighting a small candle near the window. The scent said spiced cider, but to me, it just smelled like trying. There was a draft of a message I'd written the night before. Something neutral, like wishing everyone a warm and joyful Thanksgiving. It sat in my phone, unsent. I deleted it. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sky already bruising purple. My phone buzzed. "Aunt Lillian, call me when you can, something happened." I hesitated. Aunt Lillian wasn't one for drama. If anything, she specialized in soft silences and potluck casseroles. But I called. "Hi, sweetheart," she began, voice low. "I just thought you should know, Celeste recognized you." I blinked. "What?" "She saw your photo, the one on the mantle from that birthday party. You were maybe 9, you had on that big green sweater." She said, "That's Dr. Natalie Hartman, she saved my grandmother's life." I didn't speak. She said it just like that, out loud. And suddenly, it was like someone pulled the record needle. The room went quiet, forks frozen midair. I imagined it, the dining room I hadn't seen in years. Celeste, wine glass in hand, standing near the fireplace. My face, smiling awkwardly from a faded photo. Finally taking up space I hadn't been allowed to occupy in years. "What happened after?" I asked. Aunt Lillian exhaled. She asked if you were the sister they always talked about. I don't know what they said, but she gathered her things, thanked everyone, left. That would have been enough. But later that evening, Celeste posted something. Just a few lines, no names, about seeing through silence. About remembering who showed up when no one else did. By morning, it had over 1,000 shares. She had followers, apparently, the kind who read between the lines. Art patrons, gallery folks, people who'd once believed in Ethan's vision. I stood in my apartment, holding my phone, blinking at the screen. A message had just come through. Subject: Let's reset things, from Mom, CC'd Dad and Ethan. I didn't open it right away, just stared at the bold text. Floating in my inbox like a life preserver tossed too late. The irony wasn't lost on me. They told me I carried too much, that my energy was too heavy. And yet, without me, everything crumbled under the weight of what they'd tried to forget. I stared at the email longer than I should have. Let's reset things, that was the subject line. Vague, polished, unapologetic, like a scented envelope masking the stench of rot inside. The words flowed like they always had, measured, warm in tone, empty in content. My mother's voice, my father's phrasing, Ethan's indifference woven between the lines. A family committee assembled to perform unity. Paragraph after paragraph of soft concern. We've all been under a lot of pressure. We'd love to reconnect. I almost believed it, until paragraph 4. We'd appreciate it if you could clear things up with Celeste. She's misinterpreting some things. Ethan's reputation is being affected in his professional circles. There it was, the ask. Not, how are you, not, we're sorry. Just a request to clean up the mess they created without getting my name dirty. Of course. I closed the laptop slowly, like setting down a piece of fruit that had gone bad on the inside. By mid-afternoon, the sky outside had turned to that dull November gray. And the radiator let out a hiss like a warning. I was sitting by the window with a new cup of tea when my phone rang again. Not Ethan, not Mom, a number I recognized from the hospital switchboard. Dr. Hartman, came the voice on the line. This is Craig Weller, I'm the admin who introduced you at the gala last spring. My back straightened. Yes, of course, is everything all right? He paused. I received a message from your father this morning. He expressed concern that you might be experiencing emotional distress. Suggested you may need a leave of absence. The words were professional, but the implication was personal. Craig cleared his throat. To be transparent, I don't think anything in his message warrants follow-up. But I thought you should be aware. I thanked him, calmly, almost gently. That's what surprised me most, not the betrayal, but the quiet I felt inside. Like the wind had finally stopped howling. After we hung up, I sat still for a while. My tea cooled again, I didn't warm it this time. I stood up and walked to the fridge. The pie was still there, still untouched. The crust had gone soft, it sagged slightly on one side. As if it, too, had grown tired of being ready for people who never showed up. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I simply opened the cabinet above the sink, pulled out the storage bin marked, holiday, and began folding the decorations back inside. The napkins, the garland, the little felt turkey I'd bought at a fall market 5 years ago. One by one, I placed them carefully. Not with anger, but with the kind of reverence you give to things that once mattered. Then I took a small label from my desk drawer, peeled off the back, and wrote 2 words before sticking it to the bin: unused traditions. I carried it to the hallway closet, shut the door, and stood there. In the quiet hum of my apartment. They hadn't come to apologize, they had come to preserve themselves. And I was done being the scaffolding holding up someone else's illusion of family. I hadn't seen them in over a year, not in person anyway. Photos floated through group threads from time to time. Ethan holding up wine glasses at gallery openings. Mom grinning beside some neighbor's new puppy. Dad in the background with his familiar half smile. But I hadn't looked at them in months. That Sunday, I didn't have to. They showed up at my door. It was the kind of winter afternoon where the light feels thin. Like it's already giving up on the day. I was at my desk, sorting through patient notes, when the knock came. Not loud, not desperate, just deliberate. I didn't move at first, I just listened to the sound of my own breath. Then I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There they were, my mother, bundled in her camel coat, holding a Tupperware container. The way one holds peace offerings. My father, hands deep in his jacket pockets, face unreadable. And Ethan, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Like he couldn't quite commit to being there. I opened the door an inch, not to let them in, just to make it clear I saw them. My mother's voice was soft, like fresh linen pulled from a drawer. We brought some leftovers, thought maybe we could talk. She lifted the container slightly, as if it had the power to unlock something in me. I said nothing. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes, he looked at the floor like it held all the right answers. Dad gave me a nod that might have meant hello or let's get this over with. I couldn't tell, I didn't care. I studied their faces, not for affection, not even for apology, just for clarity. And what I saw was discomfort, not remorse. Strategy, not sorrow. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here because the fallout had grown inconvenient. That's when I understood something I'd been circling around for years. You can be generous, kind, essential. But to people who only see your usefulness, your absence is more threatening than your presence. I didn't step aside, I didn't ask what they wanted. I just said it, no. No explanation, no raised voice, just one word. Like closing a book after the last line has already been read. Mom blinked, her mouth parted, then closed again. Dad frowned, barely. Ethan looked like he might speak but didn't. I shut the door slowly, locked it, turned away. From behind the wood, their voices started, first quiet, then sharper, then gone. The scuff of shoes on the mat, the muffled sound of footsteps fading down the hallway. I walked back to my desk and sat down. My tea, still warm this time. Across from me, on the shelf, sat Celeste's letter. I hadn't framed it yet, but I would. And maybe I'd hang it where the family photo used to be. Because some stories are meant to be kept, others are meant to be rewritten. The snow was thinner now, more suggestion than storm. It had been 2 weeks since Thanksgiving. And the city was caught in that quiet lull between holidays, where every storefront smelled faintly of pine. And every morning felt like it arrived a little too early. I was sitting by the window in my flannel pajamas. A mug of strong coffee warming my hands. I'd finally stopped adding cinnamon out of habit. This cup was just coffee, plain, honest enough. Work had resumed its steady rhythm, patient rounds, quiet moments. One of them, a woman in her late 80s, had looked at me during a routine vitals check. And said, "You look lighter, honey, did something good happen?" I smiled, not because I had an answer, but because someone had noticed. That afternoon, a small padded envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in careful, slanted handwriting. Inside was thick ivory stationery and a letter, in ink slightly smudged at the corners. It was from Celeste. She wrote about her grandmother, how she still practiced yoga twice a week. Still insisted on picking her own fruit at the farmer's market every Saturday. Then she wrote this: "You didn't just help her stay alive. You made her feel like she still belonged. Like someone hadn't given up on her just because it was easier." I read the letter twice, then again. She hadn't written to flatter me. She had written because she saw me. Because, for once, someone outside the family story had chosen to name the truth. I framed it that evening, placing it on the wall just above my desk, where the morning light could catch the glass. And remind me, quietly, daily, that not all validation comes from the places we expect it. Later that week, another email arrived from my family. Shorter this time, less polished. "We miss you. We didn't mean for things to get so far. Please ask Celeste to take her post down. Ethan's struggling, it's hurting his chances." There it was again, the apology that asked for something. The grief that wasn't theirs to claim. The cost of being inconvenient, now counted in dollars and deals. I didn't respond. Some silences aren't gaps, they're boundaries. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Not out of anger, but out of respect for the version of yourself you fought so hard to become. That night, I sipped my coffee slowly, eyes on the framed letter. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain anything to anyone. I didn't need their permission to matter. I didn't need their version of love to feel whole. The snow outside blurred the edges of the street, softening every outline. And I whispered, more to myself than to the room, that's enough now. Because it was. Not all healing looks like closure. Sometimes, it's just walking away and finally feeling light. If this story made you feel seen, you're not alone. Thanks for listening, and if you'd like more stories like this, we'll be back.